Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where we will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships, as well as racialized trauma, and how to overcome these things so that we can move through our pain to get the kind of healthy relationships we want, need, and deserve. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based out of California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational, informational, and entertaining, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Some of the information presented on this podcast can be triggering to some of my listeners, so listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to the show. Before we get started, of course, I'd like to start with some general housekeeping. I do have some excellent episodes coming up for you. One thing that I want to note about today's show is that it's going to be a little bit longer than usual. I contemplated whether or not I should split it up into two separate episodes, and I decided against it and just decided to make it a longer episode. However, I will say I think it was a fun episode to record, and it was, just so hard to kind of wrap up. And so you guys will get the gist of what I'm talking about once we take a deeper dive in. Just on another note, I definitely want to thank everyone for tuning in to the show today. We are still in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and I hope that you guys out there are staying safe, being practical and taking care of yourselves, and following the guidelines for safety precautions. No one is above that. I know that there's quite a few people out there that have lost their lives. So the pandemic is a very serious issue. And while I hope that it will be over soon, we're just not quite there yet. Okay, so moving on to more housekeeping issues. Of course, we do have the Facebook group for A Date with Darkness, which is also in the show notes. If you are in recovery from an abusive relationship, or you're healing from your own incidences of narcissistic abuse and you want to offer support as well as receive support from others who have had very similar shared experiences, come on over. The group is free. I do ask that you answer all of the questions to get into the group. It is heavily moderated, so that's a good thing, just to make sure nothing goes awry in that group. If you want to continue to keep up with me, you can always follow me on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, A Date with Darkness there, or also on my other account, Dr. Natalie Jones, as well. If you have questions or comments for the show, as well as relationship question that you would like for me to answer, you can always email me at adatewithdarkness@gmail.com. And be sure to check out my website for blogs, ebooks, and other things of that nature, just to stay in touch that way also. So thank you so much for joining the show. One last note that I want to mention, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the show if you feel like someone that you know could benefit from listening to this episode. Always, I'm sharing is caring, for lack of a better word. So definitely do that. And the more likes you get, the more likely my show is going to be seen on iTunes and other platforms. It helps other folks tune in and listen when show has more positive reviews. So definitely, I would encourage that also. So, without further ado, today's show is very interesting. I decided to change things up a bit. As you will see in the coming episodes, still related to narcissism, still related to narcissistic abuse, but I wanted to work a different angle for my interviews. Just part of what I like to do is investigative work. in research. So I brought on my guest today to talk about a different aspect of narcissistic abuse. And the guest that I have on today is Miss Anna Stowe of Stowe Investigations. She is a private investigator. And she is going to be talking about how narcissistic abuse shows up in her line of work. And it was very intriguing. And she brought up several different ways in which this shows up. And I actually really learned a lot from doing the interview with her. It's a lot of fun, probably one of the most fun interviews that I've done. And I know I feel like I say that a lot about some of the interviews, but really, I just had a lot of fun with this one. And she was very informative. So without further ado, here's the interview with Miss Anna Stowe. Hello and welcome to the show, Anna. How are you?
I am good today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm so happy that you could join us here on the podcast. And I know my listeners will be intrigued by what you had to say. So it kind of came to me to have a private investigator come on to the show because I think that that's something that not a lot of people think about. But I think it's very pertinent here. So, without further ado, can you tell people a little bit about you, what you do, and what's the passion behind your work?
Sure. So I am a private investigator. I have 22 years of experience. So I have owned my company for 22 years. I'm in the Sacramento area, but I work all over California. I do have a team that works with me. So I have 4 other investigators and some office help as well.
Mhm.
So we can take on larger cases than, say, just a solopreneur. We are an agency that can actually serve both law firms and the public on larger cases. My passion behind my job really started in a funny way because I was able to review some of your podcasts and I saw the term narcissist quite a few times in there. And you're really about the psychology of relationships and healing. And I love that. I'm passionate about that. I have my own experience with a narcissistic partner.
Mm,
Many years ago. It took a long time to recover from that. And back then, there wasn't a lot of information to be had.
mhm,
It felt very lonely, very uh, isolated. I didn't. It wasn't something I really wanted to talk to people about because I sounded crazy when I described his behavior.
mhm,
So it took a long time. Some books started coming out. I did my own research.
mhm.
And then I was working in a corporate environment. They did their 3rd round of reorganization, and I took the plunge and started my own investigative agency. Yes. So
Wow.
kind of try, baptism by fire, just jump in with both feet. And it wound up really because I think because I'm a woman, I attract female clients
Yes.
who are having problems with relationships.
Okay.
So the passion in there is really to help women who have had a very rough experience with a partner, many of whom would qualify, I believe, as having at least some narcissistic traits.
Sure.
The women that contact me feel crazy. They feel like they can't trust their own instincts or their own
Mhm,
intuition anymore. They feel lost and at their wits' end with the relationship because their partner is nice to them one day and then gaslights them the next day. They don't know if they're coming or going.
mhm.
And a lot of times we're able to help out. So my passion lies in just really helping people.
Ah,
Yeah.
great. So it's actually kind of cool that we linked up then.
Yes, very cool.
Awesome. And so walk me through what happened between the time your relationship ended and your job ended that said, "Hey, I want to be a PI."
That started very early in life with the Nancy Drew book series. And then in the corporate world, it was all the rage to do a lot of personality tests on
Oh,
employees
yeah.
to find fit and to develop training plans and employee growth plans around their strengths and things like that. So what I found was I'm a fact finder, and I really enjoy a puzzle. I want a problem that is complicated, has a lot of moving parts, and I enjoy solving that.
Mm-hmm.
So just being high on the fact finder or information gathering aspect of my personality kind of led to that. Also, in the corporate world where I worked, we had corporate security who were all ex-FBI. They were retired FBI agents, and their office was down the hall from mine. So I would often spend my lunch break in there asking them stories. And it led to me being able to work on a few internal cases. And I
Mm-hmm.
loved it, even though I played a very minor role in those. I loved it. And I asked them, how, if I left the company, how would I become a private investigator?
Mm-hmm.
I should say too, I had two very small children at the time, and I was a single mom. So I didn't want to go into law enforcement because of the 12-hour shifts, graveyard for, until you make enough seniority to work day shift.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like that was the right fit for my family at the time. I really wanted to have a lot of flexibility. Um, and I wanted to work for myself, so I could have that flexibility. And really, it worked out great. I was able to take the girls along with me a lot of times, and they grew up doing PI work.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yes. So they offered that third round of severance packages. I took one. I moved myself and my daughters to a new city and got my PI license.
Nice. How
Yeah.
much of a role do you feel like your ex plays into what you do today?
I think he definitely did play a role. I was. It makes sense now, being a fact finder, trying to collect information,
Mm-hmm.
why I felt so broken after that relationship, because I tried everything, right? And
Yes.
and culturally, we're taught, well, if you just work hard, things will work out. Just work harder. So that's what I did. I worked harder at our relationship, and it
Mm-hmm.
just, nothing ever worked. And I came away very lost and broken, and feeling guilty for my children, because I left their father,
Mm,
and but knowing he was not a great influence either.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think he played a big role. Um, Even to this day, I
Yeah.
still read. Um, if something new comes along on narcissism, I will read that. I think it gives me better understanding into my clients, into friends that are experiencing a narcissistic relationship, all of that. And even though our relationship ended a long time ago, and I don't have any pain from that anymore, I think it has given me a platform with my clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's great that you were able to sort of reshift and refocus it in that way. Tell me about your clients. Tell me why they come to see you. What do they want you to do?
Um, it's a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, these women are really intelligent women. They're kind, smart. They have good jobs. A lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
they do everything they can for their kids. And we're talking prior COVID. Their kids were involved in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice women who were trying to be what we would call a good wife to someone who was just never going to appreciate that. And so they come to me and they want facts. Can you tell me if my husband is cheating on me? I
Mm-hmm.
I feel he is. He says he's not. I've felt it for 10 years. but he always tells me I'm crazy for thinking it.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone. He's lost a lot of weight recently. He's bought a new car, but he's telling me he's not cheating. All the signs are there. They know it. Their intuition is telling them, but their husband has dampened their spirit so much that they doubt themselves. So they want
Mm.
proof. They want proof of whatever is going on. And it could be infidelity. It could be, did he change jobs and not tell me?
Mm.
He seems to make more money now, but I've never seen the paychecks, so I don't know, but he leaves at the same time every day, comes home at the same time every night, but I think he's working somewhere else. It could be, does he have another family somewhere else?
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is this is certainly getting juicy and my spidey senses are tingling. Um, you know, let me back up for a second because I feel like, and I may catch flack for this, but I feel like women are natural detectives.
Yes. Yes.
So it's
Yes, we are.
interesting to me that these women are coming to you because I feel like, anytime I bring up something to girlfriends, they can usually find out in a few seconds or less.
Sure. Sure.
So what is going on that these women are having trouble with discerning what's the truth or not, or going through and snooping? Is this a different type of clientele that you feel like they don't snoop, or that they just what's happening here?
I think the more long-term the relationship, the less they trust themselves. So they
Mm,
have been normally isolated from their family, isolated from
okay.
any friends that the husband doesn't approve of, that aren't his friends.
Mm,
They have been handing over their own pay for a long time. They know very little about what the bills look like.
wow.
The children's activities are controlled. There's so much control going on, and it has been going on for such a long time. It's what
Hmm.
they're used to.
Hmm.
So they have a hard time remembering what it was like before control.
Yeah.
Like during the sweetheart romance period
Sure.
prior to marriage or prior to moving in
Sure.
together. um, they look back on that and really cling to it, but it hasn't been true for a long time.
Mm. What's the average time that a woman spends in this control type of marriage or situation before they say, you know what, let me go see Anna and see what's up?
So it's a broad range. It's 10 years.
Wow.
Sometimes I've had a 35-year marriage.
Wow.
The ones who have been married less time are usually calling me to say, I want you to follow him. I know who he's seeing. I just want you to get a picture of it because I'm packing my bags.
Okay.
So they haven't been in it long enough to completely lose themselves yet. They're just looking for proof to hand over to show their own family, this is why I'm leaving him, or whatever the case may be, but they're more sure of themselves.
Mm,
Those longer term relationships,
okay.
I do spend an incredible amount of time on the phone with women, or
Mhm.
back pre-COVID, we used to meet for coffee, and they are they're just shadows of who they used to be.
Mm, that's unfortunate. And I know that all too well. Like you don't even recognize yourself anymore. And you
Right.
can't believe that you've
Right.
got to go through this at length to
Yes.
check out the person that you care about.
Right.
Wow. So walk me through what you tell these women. I think my husband is cheating. I think my husband has a new family. I think he's got a job or he's got some sort of secret. And I want you to find out. Tell me what you say.
So the first thing I say is, what is your goal? What do you want to know or not want to know?
Mhm.
And if I tell you, if we do this investigation and I say, yes, he's cheating, what is your goal with that information? How will you use that information? So I try to talk them through their own thoughts about how will this information be useful
Mm-hmm.
if you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have clients of many different cultures. So in some cultures, the goal is just to tell the husband, look, I know what you're doing and you need to stop it.
Mm.
You're going to embarrass our family.
Interesting.
Uh, yes. And so divorce is off the table in some cultures. And so the goal really is to just embarrass the spouse enough that he will leave the other woman alone.
That's
And
very
it's very
interesting.
effective.
Yeah.
It's very effective, let me
Okay.
tell you.
Okay.
The women, I used to think they didn't have any power. Like, this is ridiculous. Why would you not just leave him if he's had
Yeah.
multiple affairs? But the women actually do have a lot of power. And so once they know and they say something, they call the shots.
Mm.
And again, divorce is off the table. So that's just completely, we don't talk about that.
Okay.
It's what can the wife now control about her own life given this information. So I'll give you an example because it's kind of mind bending to think
Mm-hmm.
that divorce would be off the table for some cultures. The wife may have been limited to only spending what she brought into the marriage, her dowry money. But when she has control based on a marital affair, which could be very humiliating to the husband can let go of some of their marital assets and actually gift them to her.
Mm. So she benefits
She benefits
essentially in one way.
in one way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that makes sense. That, well, at least she's getting something out of it, a tough situation.
Yes.
What
Yes.
about others? What other people do you have what are you telling them, or what are they looking to get out of it?
So sometimes the goal is just to get enough proof to leave, to justify leaving.
Okay.
Uh, they want to know in their own hearts that it's true, that they're not crazy. Their goal is to use the information to leave.
Okay.
Others are, they'll use the information to break a prenuptial agreement.
Mm.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Yeah.
So there can be circumstances where infidelity is written into a prenuptial agreement and they need proof in order to break it. Now, that break could mean money to them. It could be the end of the marriage and a payout. It could just be we're divorcing because there's no money involved. It's just more, I'm leaving with what I brought in, you're leaving with what you brought in, and we're divorcing.
Okay.
So it really depends on the woman's goal. When the wife, or occasionally I run into a husband who has a narcissistic wife, but that's very rare. But I have them. I need to make that clear. Generally, I'm speaking with a wife and I will go through with her, why do you think he's having an affair? What clues have you seen? Has his behavior changed?
Sure.
What is his behavior towards you? And then it can come tumbling out. Well, he controls everything. I haven't seen a paycheck. I don't know where we bank. If we go out, I have to dress a certain way. The kids need to be perfect when they're seen by other people. When I start getting that narcissistic vibe, then we have a whole conversation around that. And then I point to resources, books, etc. There's Facebook groups, closed Facebook groups that people can join. And I try to get them pointed in the right direction so they can just learn about who their spouse really is.
So that makes sense. And out of all the people that come to see you, if you were to kind of make a guesstimate, out of all those people, how many of them do you actually find something to substantiate their concerns?
Generally, if a woman comes to me and she has noticed the signs of infidelity, she's right. It's very rare. Sometimes I'll take a case to try to prove that cheating is not occurring, because maybe it's not a narcissist equation. It's more of a trust issue from past poor relationships, and she needs it proven to her that he's not cheating
Mhm.
because of her past. And then, of course, there's always the referral to therapy
Yeah.
and to try to heal that. But more often than not, women are right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of what I figured. And so then, have there ever been cases that you were concerned about? If I find something, or if I find maybe more than what they suspected, have there ever been any that you've kind of been sort of apprehensive about sort of turning over?
There have been a few. And really, it's up, as far as California law goes, I have to be very careful. I don't disclose a mistress's address.
Okay.
Okay. Because my goal is not to cause harm, physical harm to anyone or
Yeah.
a stalking situation.
Okay.
My
That's what
goal,
I'd be concerned about. Yeah.
my goal is to show proof in the form of video or still photography that something is going on.
Okay. That makes
Yes.
sense. Because I would be concerned that people would be kind of hung up on that, or there would be some sort of backlash towards what they see. And I'm curious if that's ever happened to you.
I have had two in my 22 years. I've had two clients tell me that my pictures and videos were inaccurate. Um, that was clearly not their husband. He is not cheating, and you are lying about this. So I did get the rare uh, you hired me to find out if he's cheating, and now you're upset with me that I actually found out he's cheating, and you're denying the actual evidence of it. um, I get more backlash over why they can't have the address,
Yeah.
but it's in my contract. So when I am going to work with a client, I have a standard retainer agreement that I send over that says you're not going to get the address. Yeah. And sometimes that can be hard because it might be, sometimes I would say a third of the time it's somebody they work with and they recognize the people.
Wow.
So I'm not giving out a home address, but they know where they work. And so I have to be careful.
Okay. Have there been cases that have stuck with you that have been really hard?
Yes. Yeah. Would you like an example?
Sure. We got
Uh,
time.
yes. I have I had a client. Her husband had been acting not just narcissistic, but strange as well for years, and had reduced her to just, like I said, a shadow of herself. The children didn't like him, didn't want to be around when he was home. He wasn't home often because he was off with doing his thing. But he made really good money. So they lived in a really nice area. They lived
Mm.
in a nice home. She had no access to money whatsoever. She would have to ask him to bring groceries home. And it really depended on his mood if he did that or not. She had been in the position where she had to borrow milk from neighbors. Uh, uh, the neighbors kind of knew what was going on, so they would drop stuff at her door. Now she had teenagers, and you know how much food teenagers can
Oh,
eat.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he had a rule that they couldn't spend more than $50 a week on food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was really in a tight spot, made worse because she cared for her disabled mother in her home.
Mm.
Her mom lived with them. So her mom's social security money was the money that kept them fed. And when the children needed clothes, She had to tell the husband what they needed. He went and shopped for it and brought it home. So the teenagers had no control over what they wore either. It's a very bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
So she finally gets fed up. She files for divorce. And of course, he plays the continuance game. And in the meantime, their house, their mortgage is not being paid, their electricity, gas, all of that. He's punishing her. And here she has a very dependent mother in their house who cannot go without electricity, food, any of those things, normal human needs. And he stretched that out for probably 2 years. And by the time, now he made a ton of money. He worked in an industry that was lucrative, and he had paychecks that most people don't see in their lifetime. But by the time they divorced and it was time to pay alimony, he was unemployed on purpose and living with someone else who was supporting him. So, but she didn't have that option because the support was supposed to come her way. If she lived with someone else and received any sort of financial benefit from that, her alimony and child support was cut. It's a very unfair system in cases like that. So she has, she has downgraded her lifestyle to almost zero. They're in a subsidized apartment, and she's doing what she can. She does have a job. He never allowed her to work outside the home, so she does have a job, but it will take her, years to recover. And I don't know that she'll ever be a homeowner again.
Wow. Yeah. That is very, very unfortunate.
Yes.
When you meet with these women and they're wanting these things from you, or they're wanting you to do these things, or are there times when you just sort of say, here's what you can do without having to go through hiring me?
Yes. And let me tell you, and I don't mind this being advertised either, because I tell every person that calls me, if you think your partner is cheating, there are 2 free things that you can do under certain circumstances. If you have a shared cell phone plan and your name's on that plan, you can go into your cell carrier and ask for printouts of the calls and texts. And then obviously you just analyze the records and see who's being texted and called the most for the longest time, all of that. And that can give you a clue as to what's going on. And that is, I would say maybe 10% of the time they have a shared plan, because the cheating partner is too smart for that. They have a work phone, or they have their own plan, or they have a burner phone, anything, a Google number, any of that. The second thing is, if the vehicles are registered to both of you that your partner drives, you can put a tracker on it legally.
Okay. Walk me through that.
So say your partner's driving an SUV, you are also listed on the title of that vehicle. You can go to Walmart, Best Buy, Amazon, and order a tracker.
Interesting.
It's a little device. I'm old, so I compare it to a pager.
Okay.
Okay. So it's about pager size, or garage door remote size. It's magnetized on one side. So you stick it up on the frame of the vehicle, up underneath the vehicle, and it can't be seen. There's no lights or anything that happen on it. It's movement activated. And generally the battery lasts for about 5 days if you're on the road constantly. So if you're just doing short stops and starts, it'll last a long time.
Okay.
You download the software that comes with the tracker onto your cell phone, and it's real time. So anywhere that vehicle is, you can see right where it is, real time. If it's
How much is that?
They're under $100.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, they're affordable. You can get them for $60 or $70. You can get some with more bells and whistles for a little bit more, but really what you need to know is where they're going. So you can get a basic model for about $60.
Okay. All right. So hopefully you're not creating a bunch of little detectives out there.
Well, what I tell them is if you are not a registered owner on that vehicle,
You
it's
can't do it.
illegal.
Yeah.
If you are allowed to know where your assets are at all times.
Hmm.
So what you're doing is tracking the vehicle, not the person, technically, right? It's a gray
Interesting.
area.
Yeah. Okay.
We've had we've had parents put a tracker in a backpack when there's a small child going back and forth for visitation, that type of thing, just to see where they take the child. We assume the child will be with the backpack. And that works as well. But again, you're allowed to track the backpack, but you're not allowed to track your ex's activity.
Interesting. I'm sure
Yes.
people try to work around that. And I know that we've talked a lot about women with
Mhm.
broken hearts coming to see you, or women who are suspicious, right, that their heart is about to be broken. But I'm quite sure in your field, you probably have narcissistic people coming to see you as well.
I do.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what that experience is like, or what that whole sort of intake is like, and how do you sort of weed out um, people who are ill-intentioned, I should say, when they
Absolutely.
come to see you?
Yes. So I do a minimum of a 15 to 20, if not more, 30, maybe 30-minute consultation with people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I am not the least expensive PI in my area.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they'll weed themselves out based on my cost.
Okay.
But if they're not scared of my cost and we have the consultation, they will generally give me at least one red flag.
Okay.
Um, they sometimes the narcissist will say, she's supposed to be coming straight home from work.
Mm.
Um, they will say, I think she has a job and I'm at work all day in a place where I can't leave, but I think she went out and got a job and we agreed she wouldn't be working.
Mm.
Um, it can also be um, a parent trying to control an adult child.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I refuse those all the time.
What does that look like? What do they say?
That is, I am, I'm a bigwig. I'm a local celebrity. I'm a sports figure. I think I'm important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if my adult child is out embarrassing me. Um,
Mm.
or my daughter had a baby with somebody I don't like, and I want to know if they're still together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yes,
that people want to know those things and would be willing to pay to know those things.
exactly. So it's a fine line, but sometimes it's not so fine. Sometimes it's right in my face and I can just refuse the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't take jobs where I feel the clients are either lying to me,
Mm-hmm.
misleading me, attempting to mislead me, or they're trying to exercise another degree of control over another human being.
Sure. And I'm sure that comes out a lot in your line of work. People
Yes.
just want, and they'll spend exorbitant amounts of money to do that. Um,
Yes.
I'm curious to know, you had mentioned two people that had denied that that was their partner on your pictures. I'm curious to know if you thought those people were narcissistic as well,
Um,
or had those traits, that there was this sort of over the top denial and
I wasn't sure that they were narcissistic, but they certainly, between the time they called me to do the job and when I turned in the results, something clicked that they usually, I think it's monetary in
ah,
those two, where they decided that it was better to stay.
okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
they decided that it was better to stay and not necessarily that they don't want to pay you or something like that.
No, they paid me up front. I always get paid up. They didn't want a refund, and I think they discovered a monetary hitch, lifestyle,
Got it.
that might the impact was greater than they expected.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it's better for them to stay for economical reasons, basically.
Yeah, and they were both affluent, and that can happen. I don't know how the two of them got together. They could be, long-term relationships.
Mm,
I don't get into any of that with
mhm.
them. And some just find out, for instance, someone's going to retire, like their partner's going to retire soon. And if they divorce before that retirement happens, that could be impacting to
Yeah.
them
Oh,
financially.
because he's gonna get that retirement package. Better stick around.
Well, and healthcare.
Yeah.
So this was a separate woman, but she was very acutely ill, and she had a chronic issue and an acute issue that came up, and she needed his health insurance. So she was willing to stay to see out her medical issues prior to
Hmm.
trying to divorce him.
Absolutely. I can understand why I could see people doing that.
Yes,
Sort of cost and benefit analysis.
sure.
I gotta say, I'd worry that some of this stuff that you dig up could be on the news one day.
Not well. Let me think about that.
Okay.
I think a couple of my cases have been on the news, but not because something tragic happened
Sure.
due to what I found out.
Sure.
So I had early on in my career, when I was really uh, trying to explore how I wanted to specialize,
Hmm.
I got a call from an older gentleman who was married and had a mistress. It was a very traditional kind of what you think of when you think mistress. She was put up in a nice place. She had a monthly allowance. She had jewelry and fur coats, and they traveled together. But he hired me to basically find out if the mistress was cheating on him. So, believe it or not, I watched her for 2 years. And she did have a boyfriend. And
She's
my
the
client
mistress. That's what mistresses
Chris
do.
called Mister. Yes, it's very confusing after a while. But my client didn't, I know, my client didn't care as long as she was available for him when he wanted to go do something. So I just thought, well, why? And I asked him several times, why are we continuing this if you don't care? I need some reasonable explanation to from you about why we're still there, because I was worried, is he using it against her?
Yeah.
Are we de facto stalking her for him? What is the deal? And gosh, he finally broke it off with her. And I heard, I don't know, maybe 10 years later from his son. He had passed away. And they wanted to know why their father spent so much money on this particular company. And it was my company. So I said, and really, this is true. I cannot tell you what I did for your dad. It's confidential, and the contract died with him. So I am unable to tell you.
That's a very unique situation. Wow. Okay. So let's shift a little bit. All right. So these women, they come to see you. These people come to see you. You get started on a case. What do you do first?
Usually we do a lot of computer work and a lot of research first. So we will see if the subject, the partner, has another address somewhere, a PO box. We'll check to see if there are records that maybe the hiring party doesn't know about. I think I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Um, So we gather as much information as we can. If we're going to do surveillance, we will do reconnaissance on the area that we're going to surveil first.
Mhm.
So we'll go out, we'll drive out to the scene, see how tight the area is. Is it a court where everybody parks, on the sidewalk? Is it a really tight area? How many entrances in and out of the neighborhood? What does their house look like? Are the vehicles outside? Do we know what we'll be following? Are there more than one potential vehicles that the subject could be taking? So we do a lot of upfront work to make the surveillance go as smoothly as possible. Then we actually perform the surveillance. And in case anybody's asking, I don't do surveillance. I'm not talented at it. But I have people that do surveillance for me that are licensed and insured and have been doing surveillance for at least 10 years.
Mm.
So they're very good at what they do. They can drive at night and follow a car miles, which this is not my forte. I can't do that.
Mhm.
They're very experienced and they can do that. So we are able to get film of someone picking up a date, going to a restaurant. We can get film inside the restaurant, not
Wow.
audio. That's illegal in California unless
Yeah.
they sit outside, which everybody's sitting outside right now.
Yeah.
So little key, we can record all the audio we want outside.
Mm.
But we get all of that on film. We give a detailed report, a written report
Wow.
that kind of reads like, at 10:02, he exited his residence, entered his Dodge Durango with plate number XYZ, and proceeded to Highway 80, where he then took the Antelope exit. It's that detailed. And then he picked up this person in this picture and proceeded to downtown Sacramento to Morton's Steakhouse.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you do this over what amount of time on average?
On average, I think our average is about 3 days worth of surveillance. So it depends on what the client knows about the subject's
Sure.
schedule. So obviously we have incidents where the partners are already separated. Client doesn't know anything about the schedule anymore because they're not living together.
Mhm.
Or there's COVID has kind of interrupted everyone's
Sure.
work schedule. So there may be a solid work schedule and there may be not one.
Okay.
So we generally try to be out there for 4 to 5, 10 to 12-hour days following somebody to come to a conclusion. Not everyone who is having an affair has an affair every day. Sometimes it's just work as usual and the odd, Saturday morning, Sunday evening. So it depends on how much the client knows about the schedule. Some clients know it's every Friday night.
Mm.
He comes home late every Friday night and he tells me he's working overtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there some commonalities that you've noticed about affairs that you've observed or witnessed or surveilled or what have you? Have you noticed any sort of commonalities there?
Yes, there is a lot of trips outside of the house that seem unnecessary.
Okay.
There can be a sudden interest in the gym, weight loss, hairdo, new
Mm.
hairdo. I need another car, and they buy something that's either impractical or sports, kind of a sexy sports car type of
Mm.
thing that they've never even said that they were interested in. It could be things left in the car. I can't tell you how many cases I've had where the male partner keeps his Viagra in the center console of the vehicle. Yeah.
Wow.
Men, if you're listening to this, don't do that. That's an automatic clue. Your medicine should be in your medicine cabinet. But generally, it's a sudden interest in changing their appearance in some way. Money is missing. There's a shortage of money in the house, but the partner seems to have money enough to go out. Um, and just the women's intuition.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Okay.
client's intuition, something's not right in my marriage. Because I can get really detailed and asked about, sex life. Has anything, really changed in your sex life? And
Sure.
they'll say, no, everything's going just like it should be. But I have this feeling that he's lying to me.
Mm.
And he's done XYZ. And they're not really indicative of an affair, but the client knows something's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
as you do when you're married for such a long time, you know when something's not right or when it's out of order.
Mhm.
You said money comes up missing in the house. What's usually going on with the money?
Sometimes it can be the disposable income for the
Okay.
house is suddenly reduced.
Uh,
So maybe we spend 1,000 on groceries. And there's a sudden interest in a budget
okay.
system. Okay, so I need to clarify that. Just because your partner wants to suddenly budget doesn't mean they're having an affair.
Sure, sure,
It could just be, hey, we need to be more mature with our money. We're
sure.
getting to an age where we really need to make some decisions.
Right.
But it could also be especially if they're restricting your money
Mm.
in some way, that
Hmm.
the money is going to impact you more than it will your partner. That's a clue. Yes.
Interesting. So there's a fair amount of control from you for them wanting to go out and do what they want to do. They want to control you and minimize your fun or your livelihood, I should say, while they get to go out and do whatever they want.
Yes, it could definitely be that. And it could just be a sudden interest in going out.
Mm,
Or they've been a homebody and now they want to go out all the time without you.
mm. How much of yourself do you see in these women that you serve?
Oh, that's such a good question. The women that are married to or living with narcissistic partners, I can definitely see my old self
Mm,
with. I can very much empathize with them
mm,
on how they've lost themselves and they feel crazy because their partner is telling them opposing things all the time
mm,
that don't
mhm,
make sense. So they're either on a pedestal or they're the worst person ever to walk the earth. And they're just in shock about it. They're reeling from this dichotomy that they're living with all the time.
mm.
Um, uh, as far as anyone else, no, I think I have pretty good control over my life now.
Good.
And I am a business owner. I'm involved in my
Yeah.
community. No, I don't see that in me any longer. Yeah.
With respect to that, though, I do have to wonder, is there a part of you that ever wonders, you know, she shouldn't be coming to see me. She should really just go with what she knows and get out of there.
Absolutely. And I do tell them that. I tell them you have enough evidence already. You don't need me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do refer them. I mean, I should have gotten a degree in psychology or counseling because
Sure.
I wind up doing a lot of it. And I'm not a counselor. I'm not a
Mm,
therapist.
yeah.
But what I do is try to get them to the point where they feel they can go. And it's not a punishment. So there's that as well. You're not going to therapy because you're broken. You're going to therapy because you've experienced something traumatic.
Yeah. And you need to feel
And
empowered.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
need some healing from that. And a therapist
Mm-hmm.
is the best person to do that. And it can help strengthen you and
Mm-hmm.
give you back who you lost.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not punishment to go to therapy.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're speaking to a therapist. So of course I'm on board. You don't have to sell it to me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, and the narcissist has avoided therapy, right? Because
Like
it's
the
junk
plague.
science.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
And they're
the
going to take your
plague.
side for female and
Yes.
all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you ever think, gosh, I wish I would have had someone like me or known someone like me when I was married to that man?
Yes. Yes, our marriage was short.
Okay.
I did drag him to therapy, and he went one time and refused to go back. And I knew it then. I
Oh,
knew that was
yeah.
my point. I never hired an
Yeah.
investigator. It was his reaction to the therapist that sealed the deal for me.
Really? What was his reaction?
He was rude to her and felt that she wasn't qualified to give us therapy, despite the fact that, he was a high school graduate and
Yeah.
she had a master's degree.
Yeah.
Um, he wound up telling her all the negative things he thought about her,
Yeah.
and it mirrored what I was being told at home.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually should clarify. I meant to say, do you wish you would have hired someone such as yourself when you were married to him? Um,
I think I was such a good investigator back then. I did snitch. I had all the evidence. I didn't need a private investigator to tell me what was going on. I knew what was going on.
okay.
And that's just my personality.
Yeah.
He would come home after being on the road for a week and jump in the shower and go to sleep for 20 hours. And I rifled through all of his stuff
Wow.
and found everything I needed to know.
Yeah.
It was more than one occasion, many occasions I found his wedding ring in his pocket.
Wow.
So yeah.
Gotta love it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, there's a silver lining in there. So you have to appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me, when do you think people should call you?
For this type of service, I would say early on,
Mm.
because even if we don't perform a service, we're there and there's an established relationship for when you are ready. The other thing I can say is if you're planning to divorce in California, infidelity does not matter. So I do get a fair number of calls from people who believe that if I catch the partner cheating, it's going to somehow impact the marriage settlement agreement. And California is a no-fault state.
Mm.
So at that point, if you're already getting ready to file for divorce, unless you just have a real need to know about that, that's not important anymore. What
Mm.
is important is the children. So if you are wondering where the children are being dropped off during your partner's visitation time, maybe the children are little and they're not talking yet, or they're telling you things that don't make sense. That's a good time to hire me. And it's right as you separate, what is he doing or she doing with the children when it's their time? Because I have followed a drop off where the partner picks up the children, drives the children to another location, drops them off for the weekend with someone else, unknown to the biological parent, and is not there for the weekend or the week.
Oh, wow. So who is this person that they normally utilize?
Best case scenario, it's family. Worst case scenario, it was somebody living in a garage.
That's scary.
It's really scary.
Yeah, that's scary. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any last minute words of wisdom for the listeners here?
Just, women, you have all you need to find out what's going on in your relationship. You should trust your instincts and your intuition. If you are constantly getting the message in your head that something is not right, then probably something's not right. It's just a matter of what is it. But follow your instincts. Give a call to a professional if you need one. I think therapy is very important and cannot be overlooked. When you're coming out of a relationship, if you have been involved with a narcissist, you definitely need therapy. It will only do you good.
Okay, very
There's no
good.
harm that will come from that therapy. It will only do you good, make you stronger, and help you see where you can, uh, you know, uh, move on and get your life back.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Tell people how they can find you or get in contact with you if they listen to the show and they feel like, oh, I better give her a buzz.
Sure. Sure. So I've so much enjoyed talking about this. If it's okay, I do other types of
Yeah,
investigation too.
I was going to
So,
get to that next.
yeah.
So you read my mind, like talk about all the
Yes.
types of investigations you do. And then, yeah. So yeah, you could do it in that order if you prefer to do it. Talk
Okay.
about the types of investigations and then how they could link up with you.
Perfect.
Okay.
So pre-dating or dating, if you're wondering if there's something going on with your date, or you are just a mature woman who wants to do the due diligence on
Damn, I
your
should have interviewed you about that.
I know that's
What? I
okay.
didn't even know.
Um,
We might
we
have
do
to invite
background.
you back to come back and
Yeah,
talk about that one.
especially in the age of app dating, app assisted dating. You don't know who these people are.
Mhm.
I don't care if they have spent a year on the phone with you, praying with you. They are wealthy from another country, a prince, whoever they say they are. Please do a background check. Please don't send them money. And if they ask for money, call me. I'll do the background check.
Wow.
So I run into an extensive amount of dating fraud, sweetheart fraud in all ages. It's not just for seniors or vulnerable people. This happens at all ages.
Wow.
And, we would much rather do a background check for you than have you spend a few years in a relationship that isn't going to work out. Mhm.
I would agree. Although I would say if you're sending money up front, that's never a good sign.
And you're never going to get it back.
You're never going to get it back, but that's also very telling if you're doing that in the very beginning.
Someone, so a friend of mine was talking to a man, and he was perfect, and he had a website for his self-employment set up, and he had all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Something about him was off to her. She had me do a background check. He wasn't even in the United States. He was not a real person. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there's
Oh,
a
you're
syndicate.
fine. I could go all day
Yeah.
with this. My day is clear. I cleared it for this one because I knew
Okay.
this was going to be an exciting show. So you're good.
The Black Axe Syndicate is worldwide, but they operate a lot out of South Africa and Italy.
What is that?
It is a fraud syndicate where they do these types of sweetheart telephone call. They meet people on apps. So Tinder, GoFit, Plenty of Fish, all the apps, all the dating apps. Just because you have a Christian dating app does not mean there aren't fraudulent people on there.
Sure.
And we find it more with the ones that are free. Okay. So free dating app, anybody can sign up from anywhere and be anyone. So please don't send money. I told this gal when I told her, hey, he's not in the United States. As a matter of fact, he doesn't exist. I can't find him anywhere. I said, I bet her $10 that within 3 days he was going to ask for money. And he did.
What does that look like when you're
He
on the
asked
dating
her to
app?
buy
What
him.
is like the red flag on the dating app?
So it is, I'm going to get my paycheck any day, but I really want to come and see you. Is there any way that you can buy me a plane ticket? Well, sure. I want to see you too. Okay, but can you send it the money Western Union or Venmo, or can you deposit it into this account at Wells Fargo, this numbered account? So that's the red flag. They're asking you for money and they're telling you, I'm going to pay you back. I'm just waiting for a paycheck. I'm waiting for my lottery winnings. They come up with so much all the time. They'll send you pictures of their beautiful properties that they own in Italy, all of that, and you'll think it's very real. They speak like they were born here. There's no trace of an accent, or it's an Italian, a Romance language accent, which tends to get people. So be very diligent about that and just call a private investigator to do a background check. It's
Wow.
in minutes, we can tell you whether they're legit or not.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So
This blows my mind. It kind of reminds me of a show, although I can't think of the name of it. It used to come on MSNBC about
catfish.
people who did Ponzi schemes and stuff like that. I can't remember of the name, but it was like, it was one of my favorite shows at one point. And it would talk about all of these like con men and how
Yes.
they would be like gorgeous, good looking, living this lifestyle of private planes, but they had women that they were stealing from that used to support that lifestyle. So it's interesting to me, and that show was like back in the day. I don't
Right.
even know that they still make new episodes, but it's interesting to me that that kind of stuff still goes on. I guess it kind of blows my mind, but then not really, because I work with criminals.
Yes.
So
I do too. It's not mind blowing, but it
yeah.
is. The sweetheart deals still get me because people will send someone they've never met in person large sums of money. And it is the grab. And just so you know, just a little other fact on the other side of it, these people are enslaved. They owe a debt to someone. And that's why they're doing these Lonely Hearts calls
Okay.
and doing that. They're not getting that money. The syndicate gets the money. They might get a tiny, tiny portion of that, enough to eat that day, but they're not getting rich off of it. So these are people that are indebted to something like the mafia, and they're working to pay off their debt, and they have to bring in so much money to do that. All
The
right.
show is American Greed. That's what it's called. I
Yes.
wanted to make sure I was like, God, this sounds exactly like American Greed. It's like, but it's like, wow, people are still kind of doing that and getting away with it, but I guess I'm not surprised.
They just find new ways to do it. Yeah, they find new ways to do it. So the other hint is this: Social Security and the IRS will never call you. No one will call you to bail out your nephew, niece, grandson, because they're holding him captive until he can pay bail or she can pay bail. That's non-existent. That doesn't happen. So if you get a phone call from the IRS, the Social Security Administration, or somebody calling on behalf of a relative that needs bail money, please don't do that. Never give money out over the phone to anybody. They're not going to come and arrest you. They will threaten that, but they're not going to do it. So keep that in mind. Our seniors are really vulnerable to that.
That's unfortunate.
Right. We do pre-marriage asset checks. So you are getting, I know, you're getting ready to marry someone and they say they're worth this much. You go out and verify that. And people that come from super affluent lifestyles, this is very routine. So when Kim Kardashian married Kanye West, I can guarantee you there was some asset checking going on. There was talks of prenuptial agreements. Sure. There was infidelity clauses. All those things are negotiated, and really not by the two people in love. It's by their attorneys and their families. So affluent families will take precautions to protect the family wealth. And so we involved in that at times. I also do a ton of criminal defense work. So that's where I started. When I first got my license, I started into criminal defense, and I work in mitigation investigations where we would hire somebody like yourself to come in and do a forensic evaluation for sentencing. So that's kind of a more complicated investigation that we perform.
What does that entail?
It's a full biosocial
biopsychosocial, yeah.
Investigation into the defendant.
Got it.
We go back to the grandparents, great grandparents, if we can. Small detail, small case, very short. Just recently had a very young man doing mitigation on his case. His grandmother picked cotton in Arkansas. She had her first child at 12. She had 12 children. His mom was right in the middle of those 12 children. She was the only one to go to school beyond 6th grade, but she didn't graduate, and she was severely mentally ill. So when we have a defendant who comes from a family that has been marginalized, that has come from poverty, very few opportunities, lack of education, food scarcity, you name it. We go back and talk to as many people as we can. It can be neighbors, it can be old employers. We talk to everybody to tell us what life was like, not only for the defendant, who's a young man, but for his mother as she was growing up, because that was her experience. And that's the experience she took into raising him. So we develop a report from that. It's called a sentencing memorandum. So at sentencing, the probation department will present a memorandum on behalf of the prosecution, and we present one on behalf of the defense, where what we're hoping is the judge gets a holistic view,
A snapshot,
of the defendant instead of the defendant and his crime or her crime. That's all the judge knows at sentencing, unless you do mitigation. So we try to be as thorough as possible, and we paint a picture. Our memorandums are stories. We write them in story format so that it elicits the most empathy, but it also draws a very clear picture that a judge or jury can instantly relate to. And see, yes.
And that's very expensive. And you have to hire people, and you have to have money to pay for that, because otherwise you can't usually do that when you have a public defender, because basically you're trying to develop a well-rounded individual so that they don't see necessarily a little black boy that was on drugs and that shot somebody. You're trying to give a historical context so that you could see the depth of a person's character. And that's usually, people usually have to, those aren't done very well unless you have money, or that there's enough money raised to hire people like you. But
that can be the case.
Yeah.
Some of the public defenders in California, the public defenders offices, for instance, I contract with Solano County. The unfortunate thing, and Alameda County actually has in-house mitigation in their public defender's office. The sad fact is they have such a volume of cases that only the most serious cases get mitigation. And you can use mitigation for a misdemeanor. So it is not fair. It is not we already know our justice system isn't fair. It's biased. There's a lot of flaws in it. And that being represented by a public defender is very different than being represented by private counsel.
Absolutely.
And that's not a bad thing about public defense. It's that their caseload is insane. There's no way they could possibly spend the time on each defendant like a private defense attorney can. And they can't come up with the resources. They can't say, we're going to send you to Malibu for 90 days of drug rehab while we negotiate a plea based on your drug sales. They don't have the opportunity for any of that. So I'm a part of NLADA, and it's the National Legal Aid Defense Association. And there's so much lobbying going on to try to tip the scales to make things a little more fair. I hate that word, but to at least give the same amount of resources to a public defense as you would get in a private defense.
Absolutely.
Right. So one county, maybe I shouldn't mention the county, the public defender actually resigned because they had, I think, 19 attorneys and 5 investigators, but the district attorney's office in the same county had 60 prosecutors and 35 investigators.
So they're slanted more towards winning. They don't really
They
care.
already have the advantage, right?
Exactly.
So this public defender had gone on record several times saying, we haven't hired since the 90s, but yet the DA's office has expanded. They have a brand new building. We're working in this building over here that leaks and does all this. And the DA just hired their 35th
Yeah.
investigator, and we haven't had a new
Yeah.
hire since
I
1998.
can believe it. And that's why I say, usually people like you have to have money. I don't come across those kind of reports very often. Usually, if I see something like that, that's usually written by their office, and they're not very well written either. In my experience, especially nowadays. Back in the day, they used to take a lot more time and consideration, and there used to be, but now, everything is all about conviction, 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 and getting a win for a lot of the
Yeah,
counties around us now. And unfortunately, that there's a very high Black and brown population for that. But yeah, yeah,
yeah, I'm in Sacramento County. That's
yeah,
where I live, and I do a lot of work here and in the
yeah,
Bay Area. And
yeah,
it is very racially biased.
absolutely.
It winds up impacting the poorer communities more, and it is not equal justice at all.
Mm-mm, no,
That's why my staff and I do contract with public defense
yeah,
offices. We like to do that. We make less money.
yeah, absolutely,
Fact, they
absolutely.
cannot afford to pay us our
No,
regular fee. So we're picky about the cases we take,
sure.
and we want to take the cases where mitigation would be the only factor that would matter. So in other words, the guilt is either the evidence is so strong that it's not going to, the person is going to catch a conviction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we want to go in on those cases where mitigation could or will make the difference in sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Makes
and
sense.
yeah, it's sad that we pick and choose, but we have to because the county will only allow us to bill so much.
Well, and then there's your reputation at stake too. So there's a lot of balls in the air with that. You don't want to go in on a losing case. It doesn't look very good for business.
Well, it's more, is there mitigation? Is there mitigation?
Yeah.
So if you've had a wonderful life, you have a PhD, you have
Mm-hmm.
no criminal record, your parents are still married, you grew up in an
Mm-hmm.
affluent neighborhood and all of that, you're probably going to get a deal without mitigation. If you've been raised in foster care, you have a heavy juvenile record, you are now 19,
Yeah.
but you are seen on film, say security film, carjacking, that's where we want to help. You're 19. So we don't want a 25 to life sentence for a 19-year-old. We come in and do all the mitigation and
Yeah.
hope to get a determinant sentence that is lower than 25 years because you're 19,
Mm.
right? You
That's
haven't
tough
had all
work.
the advantages. Yes, it's
Yeah.
tough.
It's tough work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So mitigation is part of what we do, but we do no, we do guilt phase investigation on cases too. I just happen to like mitigation more. I like human behavior. I
Sure.
like interviewing people, learning about their families, meeting new people. I like that part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Do you do any sort of fraud cases?
We have done fraud and we do white collar crime as well.
Interesting.
I had early on a case where a woman's identity had been stolen, and we could see where this person was having other packages delivered. So I was able to eventually identify the person that had stolen her identifying information. This is where my case made it on TV. The person that had stolen the ID killed her cousin, and it was a grisly type of murder, and they kept the body around. And I sent my case over to the district attorney and said, this woman stole my client's ID. Here's all the proof I have. It instigated a knock at the door where they discovered the body of her cousin.
That is
That was on the
wild.
news.
Yeah, that is wild. That is
Yeah.
wild. And that's also very scary. But I've always said, and this people can take it how they want it, but I've always said if you're a liar, If you're a liar, you're a thief. If you're a thief, you're a murderer.
If you'll do that, you're open to other
You're
things.
open to other things. And I just, there's some people that could disagree and say you do one thing, but I feel like if you're willing to go to that extreme, because things just build. And if you're willing to go through one extreme,
It's a character thing too.
it
Like,
is.
are you, I call it morally flexible. Like, how much moral flexibility do you have? If you have a whole ton of it, then who knows what you would do?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to have your own values, whatever those
Yeah.
are. But if you don't, and you're just flexible and you just kind of go with the wind about what's right and wrong from day to day, then you're probably open to other
Yeah.
things.
Oh,
Yeah.
scary business out there. Scary. Very scary. Yeah.
But yes, we do fraud, all different types.
Okay. All right. In the dating stuff, that blows my mind too, that's still around.
Yes, please, ladies, call a PI and have a background check. It's relatively inexpensive compared to years of misery or losing your life savings to somebody who doesn't really exist. So, or just getting involved with a narcissist because he may seem flattering and the best thing since sliced bread, but 10 years from now, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, you mentioned about the women that were married and suspected their spouses of cheating.
Yes.
What is it that you notice about the women who are falling victim to these con artists?
They're lonely. They don't have, they either are widows and don't have, and they can be younger widows, but they don't have a lot of dating experience. They don't have a lot of dating app experience. So it's the first person that fished them, second person that fished them. They don't know the rules about dating. For instance, you should meet in a public place the first time you meet. You should never tell somebody your address that you've met online until the relationship has gone to a certain level. And I don't mean a certain level on the telephone. I mean, in person, you've gone on dates, you have, been out together, you've gone hiking, you've heard more about this person's story. Don't just meet somebody online and invite them over to your house. That gives them the advantage to see exactly what you have and what you might have in the bank.
Yeah, hide your assets, ladies.
Well, and even the telephone folks, the syndicate people, they'll say, oh, put me on FaceTime and show me where you live. I want to see what does your bedroom look like? And they're just gathering information on you. What do you drive? Show me a picture of your car.
Wow.
Yeah.
The art of the con, it's always evolving, and yet it stays the same. That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a different way of doing it, but
definitely is. It definitely is. So they should call you up, and I definitely think they should also watch American Greed.
Yes.
Because I feel like
catfishing, shows, Dateline, whatever that shows.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh my gosh, yes. And find someone else, move on. Okay.
This is your listeners my contact information.
Yes, please do. Tell them how to find you and what's the best way to reach you and all that good stuff.
Sure. So my website is www.stoweinvestigations.com, and it's S as in Sam, T as in Tom, OWE, investigations.com. I'm Anna Stowe. So you'll find the contact me on the website. You can always click on contact me. It comes straight to me, no one else. You can call me at 916-224-4680. And if I don't answer that, my receptionist does, and she'll get a message right to me and I'll call you back. We're fairly responsive. We try to get back to everybody within an hour.
Yeah.
So we won't leave you hanging. And then my office is located in Carmichael, but I do drive to meet up with people, and we can handle cases all over the United States. So,
really?
We can.
That's
So a lot
good.
of what we do as far as background checks are just electronic. We
Okay.
don't need to be in your town to do that. I also have the ability to perform surveillance in other states as well, just through the networking I've done with our industry associations.
Okay.
I've just been involved with them for so long that we trade work in different states. So if you have a surveillance that needs to be done, we'll figure out how to get it done.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. This has been much more informative than you know. It's been a lot of fun talking to you today.
Yeah, you too. You too.
I swear I learn something new every time I do this. So this has been pretty amazing. So I want to thank you so much for doing the show this week. I know you had a lot of stuff going on. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And I'm happy that you're around helping out unfortunate people and getting them some answers and helping them find resolutions. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Absolutely. It's my passion. It's what I love.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'd love to know what your thoughts were about this interview. If it resonated with you, if you found some helpful hints and insights from what Anna had to offer, let us know and drop me a line on social media, specifically on Instagram, or, always, you can email me as well. So would love to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend with me and listen to this interview. I hope that you had as much fun as I had in listening to it. So thank you so much. And until next time, be well.